Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to catch you up on a lot of different moves that I've been making with my roster lately, because it's interesting to talk about and see the flow of the game and how it's changed a lot since Infinity War and the update. And I also think that the advice and the ideas that I'm using can be widely applicable to both new players, intermediate, and veterans. Because if you're in my position, if you have this whole roster built out, you can start to see if your decision making is lining up with mine. And if you're a new player, you can maybe make a few different choices in terms of purchases or allocation of resources for characters in anticipation of perhaps future updates, or to just be in closer alignment with the way I see things going. So the biggest change from Infinity War was the introduction of level 70 in addition to uniforms for a bunch of key characters, mostly from the core Avengers lineup: Winter Soldier, Captain America, Thor, and a few others. So one of the big changes was that I had previously not really worked on Winter Soldier at all, but I shifted him to a very offensive build, and I'm currently thinking about switching him over to a CTP as well to just push that to the absolute limit. And I've done the exact same thing for Captain America after getting him tier 3, giving him a CTP of energy, trying to max out his ISO 8 set, and we'll be able to show you at the end of the video a clip of him in Extreme Alliance battle, so you can see the kind of numbers that he's putting out. In addition to those two characters, I am still on the fence, but I am leaning towards doing the same thing for Thor, given that his new uniform is extremely powerful. I've already got it to legendary, and he may be able to overtake the likes of Nova for Extreme Alliance battle, at least a little bit more consistently as a purely offensive threat. So I haven't yet taken his custom gear off, but I am trying to roll for a lightning damage obelisk. I may end up just taking Doctor Strange's away from his because it's got a nice proc and lightning damage. But those key moves to those characters, and utilizing the fact they're level 70, that they've got an advantage both in PvP but more in PvE, and just squeezing as much as I can out of them for World Boss Ultimate for Extreme Alliance battle, is one of the biggest shifts. And so because I don't need some of these other characters that I can more easily gear for PvP, for example, I went ahead and I changed Nova's obelisk to a CTP of authority that I had from purchasing from a while ago, which makes him a lot tankier and a lot better defensively for something like Alliance Tournament, which is the kind of premier PvP mode. And I've been able to kind of shift certain characters around. I was able, since a few updates ago, and the Black Panther update does mirror this update quite a bit, change Wolverine's obelisk around to max HP and invincibility instead of giving him a damage proc, instead of worrying about snare resist, and I was able to instead unload that onto a different character. So be on the lookout for characters who get a huge spike in damage, but because they've never been really a defensive character or a PvP character, you can really work on them singularly and in a one-dimensional way to make them just very powerful at one particular thing. I think Winter Soldier is a very good example of this, and while I'm not saying that he's bad in terms of PvP, I am saying that you can now very easily fine-tune him to be an absolute monster in PvE content. World Boss Ultimate, endgame Shadowland clears in like 10 seconds or less, and of course Extreme Alliance battle, and basically playing up to the character's newfound strength, being level 70, having a new mythic uniform, gear 25, all of these things, especially given the fact that most things in Marvel Future Fight are offensive oriented, more damage, faster, those all tend towards these new characters gravitating towards their kind of new thrones as the kings of AVX, the kings of World Boss Ultimate, and the highest clears for those stages, including a couple of notable exceptions like Quicksilver, and other kind of fastest and highest difficulty content. A couple of other things that I've still been toying around with doing, but it is definitely on my mind. I don't think Iron Man is going to take over for Cable, but it is a possibility that he will be able to shine in another area as one of the premier blast characters, because his new uniform does crazy damage, and I'll show you a little bit of that in just a little while. In addition, I am still contemplating Black Widow. Her dodge is great, coupled with especially the level 70, and her and Spider-Man both have that kind of advantage going for them, where they can almost creep into the meta, given the fact that it's much harder for level 60 to hit a level 70 unless they have massive ignore dodge, and especially with the guaranteed dodge, it really cripples any chance the enemy has of hitting you unless there's under very specific circumstances. And you see that in Timeline, and you see how frustrating it is to play against someone like Thanos level 70 when you're using level 60 characters, and just the struggle that you go through to actually hit them. So I actually want to dive into some of these characters in the game right now. Those are the big changes that I've been making as far as shifting around ISOs between characters and shifting around obelisks. I've also been heavily investing in uniforms to try to get them up to speed. I've got both Cap and Winter Soldier Mythic. I've got Spider-Man close to Legendary or waiting for Legendary. Thor's already there, but this one is a pretty hilarious clip. And that I want to take you guys on, because I'm not even going to use Ignore Dodge, and you're going to see just how brutally Iron Man just shreds through these guys. And it's even more hilarious against the Black Dwarf and Ebony Maw stage. He was clearing it as fast as Nova was clearing it, just sheerly based on the amount of damage he's able to output. And at that point, when you reach that pinnacle, they're basically doing the exact same thing. And that's what I think is a really good point to make. Even though, you know, characters like Nova, characters like Ant-Man have so much going for them in terms of the way that their skills are built, with the channeling skills, with all of those self buffs, because they're level 60, they're not at, their potential is just not as high as these level 70 characters, no pun intended. And so even though, you know, Iron Man didn't get a huge buff to self buffs, for example, with the skill changes, in addition to the fact that he's now able to go to gear 25 and level 70, this is actually making up for, it's crazy fast, making up for that fact. And so, of course, eventually we're going to see probably all characters go to level 70, and that gap will be erased. It's really nice to, wow, did the game just crash? Anyways, it's really nice to be able to take advantage for the time being of the select characters, the few characters that are able to kind of transcend and almost catch up to, if not exceed, because, for example, even if Winter Soldier had gotten this uniform without level 70, without the level 25 gear, he would never out DPS someone like Quicksilver. But with this an additional stat changes, stat buffs, in the level 70, he's able to do that, and or at least be on par with Quicksilver. So that is something that you can anticipate will be the case for the next update as well. I'm talking at minimum Scarlet Witch, War Machine, and Hulkbuster. I didn't say Winter Soldier that time. And possibly Ebony, Black Dwarf, and then less likely but also possible would be Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon. I'm not yet sure if those two characters at the end there are even getting uniforms. The slower we get these teasers and the less frequent they are, the more infrequent they are, the more I question whether we read a little bit too much into that teaser image, and if those characters were just there because they fit the best on the team and they fit the best in the flow of the battle, rather than having, you know, Hulk and Hulkbuster there because they don't want to give away things from the movie, but they also want to keep it as full as possible to not have, you know, too many large gaps. So you need to put enough characters into that teaser image, and it's the one, of course, that I'm referring to that we've discussed in 2 separate videos now. So finally, I want to take you guys into some Captain America action. I don't think Captain America is going to be top dog for a while, and of course, or for long, and of course we don't have anything to compare him to because he's the only tier 3. So that's something that I do want to mention as well for you guys to keep in mind. Don't be too eager or don't rush to get tier 3 Captain America, because the more tier 3s we get, the less impressive I think Captain America's tier 3 is going to be. And not to say that his tier 3 is bad per se, but just through extensive testing I've come to realize that there are things wrong or things that I would have changed with Captain America's tier 3 had I been able to, for example, design the skill myself. And while I do think it's a great skill and it adds a lot of offensive presence to the character, and it's really awesome to see him just completely wreck face with his abilities, it's not something that it actually functions, you know, the way that you might expect an ultimate skill to work. And I think further down the line with other characters, we're going to see tier 3 and 6-star skills that far outmatch and outpace this skill. Of course, this looks amazing compared to any kind of 1-star to 6-star skills, but you know, a lot of the first tier 2 characters over a year ago, you know, 2 years ago, they looked really good. But turns out that Netmarble actually had a lot of other tricks up their sleeve, and you know, those characters were eclipsed just a few updates later. So I just wanted to put that out there for you guys, because I don't want the hype to get too out of control. I do think Captain America is a great character, and I have a lot of fun playing with him at tier 3, and I'm really enjoying him kind of as one of the top tier characters in a way in the spotlight, but it comes at a price, and I think this will be short-lived in the long run. One thing that I can say for certain that really sucks about his tier 3 skill is the fact that it only gives him 5 seconds of super armor, and he actually gets super armor from his 5th skill in conjunction with the way that it works with, I believe it's his 4-star passive, or it might be his tier 2 passive. So with that being said, it does have its limitations. In addition, the skill, his ultimate skill, doesn't have tracking once it's cast. So if you're not close to, for example, the Frost Beast or whoever it is that you're fighting against, and you cast your skill, you'll just end up away from them, charging up, and then you'll release into nothing, because if there's no one to target from far away, even if they're not iframing, nothing will happen, which is kind of unfortunate. So there is definitely things that Netmarble could have done, believe it or not, to make this skill actually even better. I know with all this text it sounds insane. Cynicalex, what are you saying? The skill isn't good enough? The skill's great, but I just think mechanically speaking, I think in terms of the way the skill interacts with enemies on the screen, there's definitely more that could have been done. And I do think that in a few months, with another 10 or 20 tier 3 characters, we might not be so impressed with Captain America's tier 3 anymore. But here's hoping that I'm wrong. Here's hoping that he stays on top for a long time, because I love Cap being one of the dogs at the top of the heap. Let me know what you guys think of the changes that I've made to my roster, and kind of the way that I've tried to leverage and take advantage of the Infinity War update. Let me know if you've been doing anything similar or something different. Subscribe if you enjoyed the content and you want to support me. Hit the bell if you don't want to miss any of my content. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.